What's going on today, people? This is the Jewish Giraffe, back here with another video. This one is similar to... Oops, slamming doors over here, already professional. This one is similar to one of my previous videos, my Gravity Blaster, How Good Is It video. So, in this video, I'm going to be going over Frost and Flame Dragon, going over my initial ideas on it, what I think is good, what I think is bad about it, etc. And finally, a verdict. If you like this, like, subscribe, share, whatever, comment. If you want to see me do more videos like this with other new cards, like, let me know. So one thing I want to talk about is this card. Before I get into the actual card itself and what goes well with it, I'm just going to make this prediction right now. After the Mokuba event and sometime before September, maybe the 10th or the 11th, we are going to get a new pack. That is just my guess. It's also what I hope, because, spoilers in this video, I think that this card is good, but I think it needs more support to make it great, and I hope in this new pack they give us some support for this card, specifically. So, getting into it, Frost and Flame Dragon, it has pretty much a comparable effect to a similar monster that we've had for some time, being Desert Twister. Desert Twister has almost the same effect, except... So, Frost and Flame Dragon cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 fire and 2 water monsters from your graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can discard 1 card to target 1 monster in the field and destroy that target. So, this card in itself, just like Desert Twister is really good in one specific deck, being Last Gamble, which I will go over later. But Frost and Flame Dragon has a similar effect. The problem is, whereas Desert Twister needs 1 earth and 2 wind, which there are a lot of earth and a lot of wind. This needs 1 fire and 2 water, of which the 2 archetypes do not work super well together because of how contradictory they can be to each other's effects, just with the better cards at least. And while Desert Twister destroys the back row, Frost and Flame Dragon can destroy monsters, which is really good. The only problems with this is, while you can get over monsters that they have, it's hard to get over your opponent's back row, because devoting an entire deck to this card is difficult to say nonetheless. We'll get into that though. So first off, Frost and Flame Dragon, the effect is really good. Once per turn isn't as good as always, like at will, discard 1 card to destroy 1 monster, but still, once per turn is pretty good. Do I think it is worthy of an ultra rare? I think so. It could be a super rare, and I'd feel just the same about it though. But I do think it certainly has a lot of potential. It got the nice 2300 attack and beefy 2000 defense. I see really no downsides to this card, other than it has a large upkeep, I would say, to get it on the field. So going into that, let's go over the water monsters that really fit this card. I'm missing 1 on here because I actually don't have any Screech. Otherwise, Screech would be amazing with this card. But working that in the deck, we'll go over that in a bit. So first card I want to talk about was Gale Lizard. Gale Lizard is perfect for this thing. If you notice on the right there, I've put in a picture of Guns Blazing's Last Gamble Desert Twister deck. And there are some comparable things that can go between that, which I will talk about when I show a deck at the end. So Gale Lizard is basically the equivalent of Hain if it was to be in the Last Gamble deck. And I think it works really well because it goes to the graveyard, gets something else off the field. It returns it to the hand, but I mean that's really good for things like Sacred Phoenix and Red Eyes Black Dragon and tributed Toon monsters. It's really good. Although I don't actually know if that goes through tunes, so that's interesting. Treeborn Frog is interesting as well, because if you don't have any back row, you can bring it right out, which is actually what you don't want to do. You want to banish it from the back row. So Treeborn Frog is... I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. Revival Jam, I'm not sure how I feel about it either, just want to low-key show off my prismatic one. Whereas you can bring it back if you pay 1,000, I think it would be interesting because you could leave it in the graveyard and not use its effect, or if you feel like you're not going to be able to have enough defense for the next turn, you could pay the 1,000 and bring it back and potentially save yourself for another turn, so you can save up for that Last Gamble turn. Another one is Needle Sunfish, just because when this card's sent to the graveyard, you get to decrease one of your opponent's monster's attacks, and that could potentially save you. I don't know how good it would be specifically. I don't know. I think that this would be a fine addition. It just could be hard to work it in the deck with some of the other things that we'll go over. Specifically, Yomi Ship I think would be a little bit better just because it destroys the monster instead of lowering the attack. However, it doesn't have the attack power that Needle Sunfish does, and it can Needle Sunfish can oppose as a threat to opposing Mako players. Another one where I'm not sure of yet, Deep Sweeper seems like it could be good. you get to target one spell and trap on the field, destroy that target. So this is a good counter just to tunes in general, because whereas, what is the other card? There's another one, which I cannot remember the name of. But anyway, it's another Sea Serpent card where if you have another Sea Serpent fish or Aqua monster on the field, you get to tribute it. And it's 3 stars, so that's better for Mako decks. This is better in this deck. However, I think one of the best cards in general to work with this is the Jowls of Dark Demise, because if they flip Destroy, you get to take an opponent's monster, work this in with Dimension Gate, and bam, you've got yourself a new monster there. Or this works with Econ plays, or if you've got a Curse of Anubis or Windstorm and this stays for 1 turn, flip take, do the same thing. You got yourself a new monster there, and it removes your opponent's assets, which I think is a big deal. The other one of the best things out there potentially is Crystal Seer, because you get to excavate, and Crystal Seer in general is just great in last gamble decks, especially if you lead off with it first turn, get that nice flip, get this in the graveyard, everything's set, everything's good. Shore Knight, I'm not sure of yet, because specifically when the battle position is changed, send 1 water monster from the deck to the graveyard. The attack and defense leave something really to be desired, and it's not exactly going to have its battle position changed so much, unless you're changing it around yourself. And this could be interesting with Brushfire Knight, but I don't see them being really good because of their low attack. Same with Blizzed Defender. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, draw 1 card. It's got more attack and defense than Crystal Seer, but the effect is more difficult because it has to be destroyed by battle, and you only get to draw 1 card, whereas Crystal Seer, you get to look at 2 cards, draw 1, send the other one away. So, and lastly, Tadpole. I've never actually run one of the Death Croaking decks, or one of those frog ones, but I think it certainly has some potential. It's difficult to find that narrow niche though, because you're trying to get out your 3 frogs onto the field, and it's really hard to get those 3 frogs out and find room for, not Desert Twister, Frost and Flame Dragon. So that seems like the 2 decks would interfere a little bit, and it probably wouldn't be that good. So those are the water monsters for it. I want to show off the fire ones, and then I'll talk about the deck that I've made for this, because I've looked into 2 decks. One of them was hot garbage, and I think shouldn't be a thing, and the other one we'll get into. So Heavy Knight of the Flame pretty much works in most decks. This is like a tech card you can go in because there's so many special summon monsters out there. If Frost and Flame becomes any sort of meta deck, this is great to counter it as well, because you get to normal summon this, and bam, you got your, if you have it so you pop the Gemini effect, there you go, you get to destroy special summon monsters, and I think it's really good. Sergeant Electro, another really good card that can really work well in these last gamble decks, because it gets to lock down your opponent's back row, and it has a decent 1600 attack. Pretty much no downside there. Next I want to talk about is Warm Worm. So this one has a difficult place in last gamble decks, but if it's destroyed, you can just send the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck to the graveyard. So great for milling. It's great to just work around your opponent a lot. So I was looking into a little bit. I was looking into a milling version of Frost and Flame Dragon, which would run 3 Warm Worm, 3 Jowls, a lot of, or 2 or 3, I'm not sure yet, of the Dimension Gate, 3 Assault on GHQ, etc. And it doesn't, I feel like it wouldn't work because you're not running exclusively water and fire monsters, and everything gets kind of bricked up, and it doesn't seem like Frost and Flame even has a point in that deck, because you don't really need beaters in these mill decks. So, just another example. However, if you have Warm Worm in your hand, and you have this out on the field, Fire King Avatar Yaksha, say it's a last gamble deck, Fire King Avatar gets destroyed, he gets to destroy, then say your Warm Worm in your hand. There you go, you've just milled 3 cards from your opponent's deck, and you have 2 fire monsters in the graveyard, potentially making it a lot easier for you to get not 1, but 2 Frost and Flame Dragons on the field if you have the sufficient water monsters. So Fire King Avatar Yaksha is really good with an 1800 attack, and there's one specific reason why this card would be so good in a Frost and Flame Dragon just for this current point in the meta. Say you are going first turn, you've got a Fire King Avatar Yaksha in your hand, and you're playing with Frost and Flame Dragon. You summon the Fire King Avatar Yaksha, your opponent will never play back row. They will not play any sort of back row other than maybe Enemy Controller or a Super Rush Headlong, because they are fearing the Phoenix. No one runs this card unless you're running a Phoenix deck, so it is a great surprise factor monster. If they don't attack it, they don't want to destroy your potential Sacred Phoenix in hand. And there you go, you just start milling cards out of your own deck. If you're milling Worms, say you've got Crystal Sea in the graveyard, this card gets destroyed, you get to destroy another maybe Jowls in your hand, and then bam, special summon your Frost and Flame Dragon next turn. I think that this is one of the best fire monsters that you can have at the current time in a Frost and Flame deck. Next up is Brushfire Knight, as I was saying, but that 1400 attack and 1200 defense just isn't good, and it's also when a fire monster is destroyed. So when this card is destroyed, send one fire monster from your deck to the graveyard. If it was 2 fire monsters and 1 water, maybe this would be better, but I'm not really so certain. Another card we have, this is more of a joke than anything, Poke Draco. This is just good to mill your deck if you want to somehow run a Buster Blader Dragon Fusion. This card could be cool, normal summon it, fusion with Buster Blader. It's also interesting because Frost and Flame Dragon is a fusion card for Buster Blader as well, for that Buster Blader, the whatever warrior, the card I don't have. So that card's interesting. If you want to use Poke Draco, go for it. I could see it maybe doing something, maybe not in Legend or Plat, maybe like Gold or something, maybe in King of Games, because that has been a joke. Second Booster is another card I want to talk about, because you can tribute this card to give another card that 1500 attack, which is really nice, and it puts in your graveyard. I would not see anyone running more than maybe one of these in a deck, though, because it also has to be normal summon already, and that low base attack and defense is not going to keep it on the field for very long. Click that the wrong way. And Blazing Apache and Great Angus, I just wanted to put in there because they're both beaters and they're both normal monsters, so if you have ways to get these guys out on the field, they'd be really good. So I want to just go over my Frost and Flame Last Gamble deck, which is, there's 2 versions of this deck I've been looking at yet. So right now I only have 1 Frost and Flame Dragon. I would recommend running 2 to 3 in this deck. So just comparing this to Guns Blazing, his deck with the Last Gamble Desert Twister, it's got a lot of comparable aspects. I don't have the deck in front of me, I edited in the deck post-op, so I won't know. But Hane is basically the same as Gale Lizard. In that deck, I know you've got Searchers. I can't remember the name of the card. It's going to annoy the hell out of me if I can't think of the name. So let me just find it real. Yeah, in Blue Dragon Summoner, you've got Searchers. You've got basically the same Searcher in Crystal Seer. It's really good. You've got ways to destroy your opponent's monster with 4-star Ladybug. You've got ways to get rid of monsters with Jaws of Dark Demise. You've got beaters in Warrior Digrepher, and you've got beaters in Fire King Avatar Yaksha. The only problem that comes in is whether or not you want to run these Worms. I would either recommend having these 2 Worms and 2 Fire King Avatar Yakshas, or you remove the Worms completely, you run a 3rd Fire King Avatar, and then you run, here we go, 1 Sergeant Electro, or you do 1 less Fire King Avatar, and you put in another Sergeant Electro. It just depends on how much actual power you want to put in. I think 2 Sergeant Electros would be better because you really need to lock down your opponent's back row. Since, I mean, the only ways to get rid of back row in this deck would be the Sergeant Electros or the Storms. Another thing with this deck, you're only running 2 enemy controllers because I don't really see you needing 3. 2 is pretty good. Storm is there because Storm gets rid of back row. I only have 1 Wild Tornado. You could potentially run 3, but I think if you're running Jowls, you want to have Dimension Gates. If you're not running Jowls and you're running some sort of other water monster instead, I'd say go all for it. Run 3 Wild Tornadoes, run 2 if you only want to run 1 Dimension Gate. That can all fluctuate. I haven't actually tested this deck, is the only problem. I'm not going to test it until I get another Frost and Flame Dragon. I might test it a little bit if by the end of the event I can't get another one, so I'm just praying I get a 2nd and 3rd one. 3 would be really nice. I'll deal with 2 if that road comes. But yeah, so I hope you like this deck. I was talking about another deck earlier that I was looking at, which was the Frost and Flame Dragon Mill, but I really don't think that deck is good, so I would not recommend that. I would just say this deck in itself is probably your best bet for making some sort of this deck viable. It's funny, earlier today in the past, I've been dissing this card like crazy over Discord, and I was like, this card is garbage, like there's no support for it. But then I realized there actually is support, you just have to go looking for it. And it, like, I feel bad for how much I was shitting on this card. Like, I feel like it's actually going to be not bad. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't have a ranking for it. Like when I had Gravity Blaster, I hadn't used it at all, and I just knew off the bat like this thing's going to be between a 6 and a 7. Like it's not going to be over that. Desert Twister in this day and age, like it's not super viable anymore. It's still moderately viable. Like I'd give that deck maybe between a 7.5 and an 8. I don't know how this is going to work out, so I think this deck could work anywhere between like a 5 to a 9. I don't know. It really just depends. I mean, it all depends on how you use it. So yeah, other options for this deck, if you don't have the enemy controllers, you can run a variety of other options. Super Rush Headlongs work well in this deck. You could even, if you don't have a Wild Tornado, I would recommend at least one Wild Tornado because it's actually really good with the storms and everything. You could run 3 enemy controllers and 3 Dimension Gates if you're all about stealing your opponent's monsters. Because by Econ taking, you'll get one of your monsters in the graveyard, Dimension Gate, steal them, and then you can special summon Frost and Flame Dragon, and there you go, like, everything's good. So, yeah, that's all I have to say on this one. If I am able to get another Frost and Flame Dragon, expect a video pretty much ASAP. I will try and get some King of games going with that. If I'm not able to get one, rip my life, and that's basically it. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy. Leave a comment down below for what you think about this deck. Share it if you want. I hope you all enjoy it. This is the Jewish Ref, and I will see you all later.